good to go. Good afternoon. Welcome to our informational meeting. First item on the agenda, as usual, is Deborah A. Owen, City Clerk. Deborah?
Thank you, and good afternoon, Sioux Falls City Council. A couple of items to remind you about, just a note of explanation. There is a letter at your desk that came in today from Planning concerning the Pettigrew Heights item on the 7 o'clock agenda. This is a letter that is from a citizen about that update, and just to let you know why that is there. In addition, you have your 2010 calendars. Some of you like to keep that in your drawer. That's why we provided that for you, so you can take a look at that when you are at your desk, or if you'd like another copy, just simply let us know. We can provide additional ones for you. As you know, that has all of your meetings, at least the majority of your meetings for the year. Doesn't include the Board of Equalization and or other ones that aren't regularly scheduled in terms of on Monday nights, but it does helpful. Hopefully it's helpful for you in organizing your schedule for 2010. And then also there is, I've worked with a couple of council members. As you know, under the charter, you have the ability to bring forward a charter revision amendment. And so there are a couple of ideas out there amongst council members. One is something that was talked about a while ago. It was the idea of reducing the 200 signatures that are on petitions that council candidates or mayoral candidates must have before getting their name on the ballot. And the idea would be to reduce that. I picked an arbitrary number of 100, but just to kind of explain for those of you who may not be familiar because you're elected at large, if you're a council district person, the people who are circulating petitions in your district cannot get the same signature of the same citizen on everybody's petition. So if you have 5 candidates in that particular district, they all must find 200 separate names, and that becomes difficult to do. They only have given about a month to get those names, and as all of you know, that I think Sioux Falls has probably the highest number of required valid signatures, even including those that are for statewide office. So just an idea. The other one is 2.05, and that was with Councilmember Litz. This would simply add some language that's already in executive order. As you know, there's a prohibition in Section 2.05 about interference with the administration. This would not really change. It uses the language from the executive order issued by Mayor Munson. It was issued in 6706, and it mirrors that language in places to allow for information gathering to use for your legislative capacities and to respond to constituent services. But it does give respect to the administration in terms of those mayor's MOU directors, and it has the same line about public information that is all in the executive order. Something to look at. As you know, council has the ability to bring a charter revision amendment by the charter. It's section 8.01, and so you can do this in an ordinance, and I think that is the suggestion of some council members. So, another thing about, pardon me, but to go back to the 6.01 section concerning these valid signatures, this would be the one election where if you brought that forward in an ordinance by the city council, you don't have an incumbent running, so there would be nobody who's on the council would benefit by the lower number of signatures, if you will. So it would be an appropriate time, or very advantageous, if you will. It's very vanilla in terms of there's no political gain by anybody on the council, as none of you are running as incumbents for a council seat. So that might be a good timing on that. But again, both of these are very vanilla, as the 2.05 does mirror Mayor Munson's executive order that is already out there. And then finally, I left you a note about laserfish. There's been some questions. I know we've been working on this since about spring of 1997 with IT, and had emails back then about putting that in our budget, which we did do for 09, and consulted with them, and have consulted with them all along in this process. But just wanted to let you know a little bit about, there were some questions about who uses this software. Would it be just small cities? At one point in time, the city clerk's office did put together a list of people who were close in proximity to the region, so we could do a day trip to go on site and look at that software and how that was being run. But obviously this is an international company who has very large clients, federal, local, county, state. You have justice departments. And clearly, here you have Anaheim, California, St. Paul, Minnesota, Wichita, Kansas, Fargo, North Dakota is purchasing it this year and coming up on board. Bloomington, Minnesota, again, near our region, purchased it this year, will be coming up on board on January 1 of next year. Ramsey County, for instance, which is, of course, a very large county. It has the Twin Cities there. And then Riverside, California, a very large city. All of the Medicare processing centers across the United States with the federal government, which is actually a very complicated system, as you know, that is all run through the Laserfish software program. In addition, the Bank of China and the Bank of Scotland. So just there's like 27,000 organizations who use the software. But I wanted to give you something that would be local, and then perhaps kind of relay the depth or the breadth of how excellent the software is in terms of the clients who use it. And then also there was questions about whether it was compatible with Microsoft technologies, in particular Microsoft Office. And so I just borrowed that as well. It is a Laserfish product. Suite is built on top of Microsoft technologies, and it supports Microsoft SQL and Oracle platforms and features a seamless integration with Microsoft Office applications and a two-way integration with SharePoint. Again, this company's been around since 1987, so about 22 years in service, so it's very reputable and works very closely with a lot of governmental agencies, including local municipalities. Just wanted to give you some background for those council members who may be newer. We budgeted for this in '09, but there are things that I'll let you folks discuss about in a moment or two, but it has been an ongoing project and one that we were hoping to launch this year. Thank you. Any questions?
Councilor Knudsen?
Deborah, I was wondering regarding the charter revision bid on signature. Something I guess I've never even thought about before today is I wonder if we'd ever want to consider at the city level, since we mirror the state on so many election requirements, if we'd ever want to consider like a percentage of how many people voted in the last election kind of thing like they do at the state level. I've never ever thought about that before.
Sure. That would make, I was just picking that number arbitrarily. I do think it's a burden, though, for candidates, and we do hear that for those who are on a district level and are circulating those petitions in that district. You know, it's in the month of February, so it's cold, but, you know, they kind of go door to door, and they end up kind of overlapping each other in certain neighborhoods, and so it can be very difficult to get all those names.
And then just a second thing, just on the calendar, I was just saying this is not a question, Deborah, so much as just for the city councilors up here. It might be helpful for us just to kind of mark, I think it's I believe, and Deborah can help me if I'm wrong on this, I believe it's the third week in March. That's Board of Equalization, and we might want to just mark that on our calendar since sometimes our schedules get so busy and we have trouble getting all of our slots filled.
I'll be out of town
No.
That whole week?
wherever that is in March.
Could I go with you? I'll go with you.
One of the conversations that I've had with some of you in reference to the election signatures is that I think that and it's not exactly the way we talked earlier on the written memo that you have, is I would like to see a difference between the at-large number of signatures and the district signatures. It seems to me that the whole city is a lot easier prospect, if you will, to get 200 signatures than it is to get 200 signatures for a individual district. So what I would suggest is that we leave the at-large at 200 and do the district somewhere around 50 signatures, which I think is also the number that the county uses. And the school board, thank you.
And state legislature, if you're going to run for state legislature.
And state legislature, thank you. So anyway, I think there needs to be some difference between those two.
Sounds good.
Well, I appreciate Gerald's comments. I just guess if you're running for the council, you're running for the council. You know, I mean,
It's the signature issues that's the issue, not the, if you're running for council, you are representing the whole city, I understand that, but it's easier to get 50 signatures in a district than it is to get a couple hundred when you're looking at a community-wide election.
Point well taken. Just one more comment, Mr. Chair. I find it interesting. The Bank of Scotland or the Bank of China likes laserfish. You know, it's kind of funny that They probably had to have it to manage our debt over there. I also find it ironic that the largest communist nation manages the debt of the largest capitalist nation. Isn't capitalism just odd sometimes?
Any other comments from the esteemed, learned crew here? Councilor Anderson? Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor Jameson?
I was just going to add that as a guy who just a year and a half ago ran and went through this process, I found it crazy, even while I was getting signatures, that I wound up on several streets that were also, my opponent had gone through the same streets. And I was like, okay, well, I'll move over, jump over 3 or something, that, start over again. And again, I ran into the same issue. I think we were both going to high concentration home areas, but once we dispersed out, it kind of worked out. But all of us know if we carry around a petition in our pocket, like any candidate probably does, there's a question you might ask somebody that you run into: where do you live? Could you sign my petition? And oftentimes it's no, I don't live in your district. But I think there is a challenge here of getting 200 signatures within my own district. I ran into the challenge just recently. I wanted to share that with you guys, that it was a challenge for me.
Councilor Anderson?
On that subject, I guess, I've run at large and for a district, and I found that running for a district, it's much harder to get 200 signatures. You really have to get out there. And I think that by lowering that number, we might get a better number of candidates actually running for those districts, and I think that'll be a good thing for the city.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, we should make it easier for people to run, not harder, and it seems to make sense to me as well. But I'm sorry.
Just make sure I want to add this, but I absolutely learned a lot by getting those signatures from people and the whole thing. It was a very worthwhile experience. I don't know if 200 is the right number, 50 or 100, but certainly a great learning curve that occurs, and I don't want to decrease that so much that curve doesn't happen, but certainly make it easier to get more candidates would be good. Just
Any other comments?
I have on the Laserfish, where are we at on the purchase of this now? I thought that this was already supposed to be done, and now that we're getting so close to the end of the year, I don't know if we have an update that we can be given, or...
Well, we don't really have any update per se, but we can tell you about some of the conversations that have happened over the course of the last week or two. Obviously, Deborah has been working, and this has been a priority for the council for a number of years now. We've brought it up to the mayor in the leadership meetings over the last, I think, starting in November, maybe even back to October, and I guess we all, I think even the mayor included, thought that the process was moving forward. Somewhere along the line, we've hit a snag, and I've got an email here that I'll forward on to you from Mike Hall, and it was dated from last Tuesday, December 15th. And essentially, what it comes up with is that they would like to go out and do an RFP process for a service that would meet the needs of the entire city. The indication from Mike is that for some reason or another, that Laserfish might not be the solution for the entire city, and they would like the time to go and ferret out what might be another process and actually take RFPs, even though they're not required because it involves technology. We have a decision that we probably need to make today from a standpoint that do we want to continue to move forward on the Laserfish side for the clerk's office, or do we want to give them some time to go out and try to ferret out possibly a different solution. You know, our budget, the money that we have allocated for it expires in 2009 at the end of the year, and that money will go back to the unreserved fund balance when it's not used. And we don't have it in the budget for next year. So if we decided that ultimately Laserfish was the right decision for us, we would have to do a supplemental appropriation, which of course the money would come out of the unreserved fund balance. So at the end of the day, it's not a more money, less money thing. It's about sticking to the budget.
I guess I sort of question IT's statement that this is not going to be compatible, considering that the entire city uses Microsoft, including the servers are all Microsoft. So I don't understand where they say that this will not be compatible.
Well, I can tell you, and I can just read you a little excerpt from the email here, and again, I'll forward it to you, but it says, and this is from Mike Hall, so I'm over my pay grade on the technology issues here, but Laserfish will not meet other city department needs. IT's overriding goal is this project has to find a solution that will meet the document imaging management needs of all city departments. Laserfish appears to be the solution of choice for the city council clerks, but it does not seem to have caught on in departments outside that arena. Some of the specific technical items that concern us are Laserfish will convert all documents images to a TIFF file format. That may be good for documents that need to be scanned, but other departments also want to store documents in their native format, Word, Excel, PDF, etc. So that's one item. The department needs a solution that would allow document versioning. This would keep track of revisions and changes throughout the life cycle of the document. Example would be executive order drafts and contracts. C, Laserfish does not have a local vendor presence, a reseller, nor are they a customer in Sioux Falls, or are there any customers in Sioux Falls. We did find one small install in Brookings and one in Marshall, Minnesota. We have not made any site visits to date. The vendor is out of Wisconsin. Some of our major problems in the past have been working through startup and updates with out-of-state vendors. It is much easier to get support problems addressed when they can work through a local provider. D, as discussed, because of the technology exempt, and that's the RFP process we don't have to use, but they would like to use. And E, there will be duplicate costs if we purchase Laserfish. Examples, support, hardware, licensing, and product will not meet other city department needs. So that's just some of the issues. Yeah. You probably are more technical savvy than I am, so that's just the email I got.
Okay. I guess the problem I have is we've been working on this since 2007. The city council, the previous council, approved this, and at the last minute, IT is going to come up with these reasons after they've been working with our clerk staff to get this completed, and then the last minute they want to say that it's something they want to delay and look at other things now. I guess I'm trying to figure out exactly where this broke down between 2007 and today. It just doesn't seem right to me.
Well, if I could, I can add that I did do additional research. I mean, when we first went to budget this item, it actually was for the product Laserfish. I have those correspondence on file if you are interested. But clearly we had to work with IT to get the amount to go into our budget. But for their expertise on giving us what kind of equipment and software we would need through Laserfish, we wouldn't have had the money to, we wouldn't have had a ballpark. We wouldn't have had the knowledge. So obviously in 2007, that was part of of meetings with and then subsequent emails from IT. I can say that at the time we were looking at it in 2007, it was going to be citywide, and then I had received email correspondence in 2008 that said they would not be. They'd be doing something different from us. And what their portion was going to be in OSEP, and our portion for the city was going to be in the city council's budget, and that was severed back then. And so I didn't really realize until more recently that they had wanted to make it a citywide system again, because at one point in time the correspondence I received from IT from my call was that it would not be citywide. I can tell you with the TIFF files, I'm not sure where that information comes from. I have spoke with the company numerous times and gotten the information and actually sent them in an email. I think council leadership was on that one earlier this month. And clearly, obviously, they work with, you can see the breadth of the companies that they work with. They have to be able to work with Microsoft Word and Office and all of those things. And so it depends, we don't want to change our original, that's the law. But you can create like a, subdoc and there's a number of things, obviously. It has all that capacity to do that. The local vendor thing, I can only offer this to you. We have the Granica software. That is not a local vendor. They didn't have the expertise, anybody locally who could do that for the city council. But with the technology now, you have the ability to remote in. So if we have questions, if Granicus won't come up in a 7 o'clock meeting that's live, we make a phone call, and they remote in, and it's fixed quickly. They have a 24-hour service because their clients are all over the world. And the same thing with Laserfish. They actually remote in quickly. It's actually faster than if you drive across town and come to our office. You have the ability to get in seconds, fix it, and then move on. So that things that technology-wise are changing at such a level that you can have the ability to have vendors who are outside of the borders of our city or our state. And in fact, Laserfish, we did put a spreadsheet together that had a number of local cities, I think Rapid, Brookings, Marshall, of course St. Paul, which is larger, and there's some counties for IT to call and talk to those people because they were local. But we didn't, pick a large city at the time. We were trying to do a day trip, and that's what we had hoped to do. And we would have paid for that. It was approved by council leadership. But that didn't materialize with IT, that we had wanted to do that and had reserved the day. I do just need to say, of course, I'm tremendously disappointed at this that this may not happen this year, but it will be up to council. Obviously, it was something that you appropriated, so it was something in the budget, but I'll defer to your wishes. Thank you.
Councilor Litz. Councilor Litz.
My question has to do with, if they let's say they do go out and find something and they get it for all city departments, are we included in that part of it, or we got to come up with our own funding again? We would have to do that again for our component on it. Is there some way that this money that is going to get returned back there, can we roll that over for the same purpose for next year?
Well, okay, I proposed a similar question to Mike last week because he indicated that this digital imaging program was being worked on. It was on the slate for 2009, but it was part of the holdbacks, as far as with the budget process. They picked out their projects they wanted to sit on for a while, and that was one of them. But yet that they were committed for it in 2010. Because my comment to him was, well, if you're going to be holding these back for some time, we might as well just move forward from a city council clerk's office standpoint and go ahead and move forward with our process. He responded back to with an email which I have just sent to you, but it was essentially they've got it in their budget for 2010 and they're committed to getting it done in 2010. And I think in the other email was that they hope to have more information or decision made by the end of the first quarter in 2010. But it is my understanding that it would include the entire city.
I just need to clarify, the money that they have set aside, if it is set aside, it would have been in CIP, which of course you have 3 rolling years forward. That's for the hardware. For the software, which what we were going to purchase, is in the operating budget, which lapses at the end of the year. So it's a little bit different in the funds and the ability to roll forward or to have the money lapse. Ours will lapse. And we don't have anything in OSEP.
Councilor Staggers?
Yeah, Deborah, can you tell us how much money we're talking about?
Originally, when I first got my quote from Laserfish, the IT said about $50,000. When I worked with, and I've met with Laserfish at a couple of trade shows over the last 4 years now, I guess, and sat down and worked through the program. We've done a few webinars and all of that. My original quote was about $26,000 that I had worked with Laserfish, and I thought that would be adequate for our office and for internal audit. And then gave it to our IT staff in May, and subsequently, we had a number of meetings all summer long with IT about what they wanted to do, and they had talked with, or of course, talked to Laserfish in great detail. And they came back with a quote that was given to us in November. IT came back with a quote in November that had it about $49,000. They wanted to go with a different, like a workflow management system for the City of Sioux Falls, so that departments could communicate to one another. And that was IT's proposal in November, which was fine. We had the money budgeted for the software, and that was fine. We could certainly use all of those funds that were appropriated by council. But that was IT's proposal at the time. It was like about 48, I think, and change. I've adjusted it down a little bit. When we met with Jerry and another employee before Thanksgiving here at the Carnegie, they had wanted us to get an additional server. So I made sure I got the budget, kind of reduced a little bit so we could afford a separate server for the product, which was IT's request. And since then, we've just kind of been waiting.
Yeah, Deborah, I don't know, this might be an impossible question to answer, I should say. But let's suppose we would go ahead and get this. Okay, then in the future, the city gets another system. Is there any way to know whether we could lend we could lend the system so we could work with their system or not?
Well, in terms of workflow and how they operate, because we're separate branches, we don't really necessarily need to integrate that much. I can't imagine it not be. I can tell you this particular software is compatible with Granicus, which was a very important thing for us since we work with Granicus software for web streaming. So this one is compatible with what our needs are, and it works for us, and it's a great company. I don't know that it couldn't. I know that some departments or divisions have already a digitized software program that they're working with. Other departments have some already purchased and are integrated into their systems. So I'm not sure. I couldn't answer that because I'm not sure all this. I think the police and there's others who have different software, so I'm not sure.
Just for a point of reference, too, and I forward you another email that I got from Mike, but he's indicated that he's on vacation right now, so that's why he's not here today. We have meetings scheduled with Mike and Deborah and Greg and I think a couple other people on the 29th in the mayor's office to try to figure out exactly what we want to do. He's indicated that he thinks we can still take possession of the software at that time and get it in under 2009. I don't know. I have real skepticism about whether that's possible because I think there's a number of contracts that follow these things, and I doubt that those contracts are going to get executed in that short amount of time, particularly considering it's over the holidays. So in my mind, I think we have to decide whether or not we want to push this thing through in 2009 or let it fall to 2010, allow the administration to do whatever due diligence they want to do, and if they come back with a better system, that'd be it. If not, we come back to the original plans with Laserfish. I just, in my mind, I suspect that Laserfish ultimately is going to be the product we're going to have. To me, it's a question whether or not we force it through in 2009 or we wait in 2010. It's the same money. It's all coming from the same pot. It's going to, what we don't use in our budget is going to go into the unreserved fund balance, but we'll have to do a supplemental appropriations in 2010 to get the money out. Councilor Bennigan?
Well, first of all, I have to say I'm a little disappointed in the process, but I think we should have had this decision made before, but I've been involved in many software implementations and trainings and support issues in another life. And I can tell you that every one of them that's not worked well is because not enough research has been done and not enough training's been done and not enough support's been accomplished to make sure that it's been done right. We've been at this for over 2 years at least, and we're still not where we need to be, but I think we need to make a firm stand and a firm commitment to IT to let them know that we want this done by the end of March and that we've messed around with it for as long as we want to mess with it. We'll all still be here at that point. But it's not only the cost of the software. That, frankly, is the upfront cost, but the support systems that you have to deal with and the training issues that are coming later, and to try to support different software packages for different departments is an additional cost. I don't care how you look at it, you're going to spend more money in support contracts and those kinds of things than you will ever spend on the initial software package. So I would recommend that when you have this conversation next week, that we draw a line in the sand and say we want a proposal done by the end of March. We want to know how it's going to work with all the other departments. Whether we have to do a supplemental program based on putting the money back into the general account this year is not the issue. The issue is that we have a responsibility and a goal to get this thing done, and it needs to get done before most of us are moving on. So I think that the issue has to be, frankly, strongly worded and just say, we're not ready to make a decision as of this week, but we want a solution by the end of March.
Yeah, and let me read to you the first line from one of the emails, and again, you have it, but it says, we can wrap up the RFP process and have a solution identified by the end of the first quarter 2010. Does that meet your needs? Or what-
Meets my needs, but
Okay.
we want to make sure we got a tickler file to make sure that we are on track by that time.
Okay.
I can, if I just could offer, this was the proposal sent to us by IT. This is the proposal for the software that they had proposed for us. It was in terms of being a counter to what we had delivered to them in May, and they did actually propose software and gone through the system extensively and came back with a proposal and a bid estimate, so...
And I agree with that, Deborah, but the issue is, bottom line, they're eventually the ones that are going to end up supporting this. They're the ones who understand the rest of the systems. For us to wait 3 months is not a big deal. I think we need to move ahead and get this solved by the end of March, make sure that everybody's on board, everybody's on the same bus, driving in the same direction, and then we'll decide if, in fact, we have the right program for the right cost.
I agree totally with Councilman Benega. The only thing I guess I'm disappointed by in the reply is the applications that he discussed in there are all Microsoft applications. So the statement that they may not be compatible, I think, just doesn't fit. So they need to, basically, once again, they need to do their homework and make sure that they notify the council when they're going to hold up something like this. That's to me, is another point of the issue, is that this has been held up to the last second, and now we've got to have an emergency meeting to decide what to do. And this is something that the council members that are going to be leaving here in a few months all decided that it was something important that was needed to be done, and there was a failure in some type of communication here between the IT department and our staff to make sure that this did get done. So I agree that we should be very strong about making sure that it's done by the first quarter or before the city elections in April.
Did you get a copy of that email then?
I got both
Okay.
of them, yes.
I don't know, and if when they put their project on the back burner and with a holdback, if they just unilaterally kind of included us with that, I don't know what the scenario was in their minds, but we can certainly relay to them that we expect a solution, because I think we all are as committed to it as the first day of the process. It certainly will go a long ways to providing efficiency and time savings to the clerks and to all the employees throughout the city. Councilor Brown, do you have any comments, or? No. Litz, anything else?
Agree with Joe.
I think that's a great idea, Gerald. I do think that the RFP, I guess I would like to have the council, or the ability of the council, to have a look in on that RFP to make sure that it meets our needs as well. Obviously, we have found one that does, and at one point in time it was with IT, and now things have changed out, but I would like to be a part of that RFP process.
Certainly. Councilor Bennigan?
I'm wondering, since Finance Committee doesn't have a lot of responsibility right now, if some of us on Finance might want to even be included in that conversation to make sure that this thing stays on track.
That's fine.
Yeah, I like that idea. I also just want to make sure everybody gets at least an understanding that I have, is that I think Deborah's been trying to handle the slippery bar of soap for quite some time, and I think maybe we've got some ideas maybe that Pat and I can work on about delivering a stronger message from the council on exactly what we want done and when we want it done, and what's our priority list, kind of working through a list all year long. And but from what I've learned and what I've watched, I think Deborah needs to be committed for grappling with the slippery bar of soap for us.
Committed or commended?
Committed, maybe. And the rest of the council here needs to dry this bar of soap off and give it back to her and let it get done. It is kind of crazy to watch this all happen the way it's happened. I've just watched it for the last few months, and it seems crazy, but Deborah has done a lot of good work. And if we ever really want something done, all we got to do is turn her on, and she's tenacious about getting it done. So I think that's what we need to do collectively, is turn her, I don't want to say turn her on, but get her going in the direction we really want her to go. And if we're behind her, I think that's really the best message we can send forward to any administration.
Councilor Anderson?
I just want to thank leadership for, once you had knowledge of this issue, jumping in there and getting something done.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
You bet. Councilor Knudsen?
Deborah, regarding the numbers you were mentioning for laserfish, because I think this is the first time we've actually talked among ourselves about laserfish, isn't it? I mean, I appreciate the work that Deborah's done on this, but I'm just saying, as far as city council level, I don't think we've had a discussion before. And so, Councilor Anderson, I don't think the council has necessarily written off on laserfish before, because this is the first time I've heard this much about, or heard anything about laserfish. So when you said, so I'm not sure that we, as a city council, had
Yeah, actually,
made the decision to do laserfish.
If I could, there's been numerous memos that have been sent to council, not as much lately, other than just that we're working with it. Of course, we talked about it during a meeting 2 weeks ago during exec session. But I've had numerous memos, in part because we were working together at one time, the administration and the legislative branch, on a software package. And so in order to get it into the council's budget and to have budget authority for that particular project, I needed to get council's permission to do so. So yes, there were some updates on that.
And I've heard, and I've seen references, in memos and so forth. But I mean, as far as I can remember, and I could have been gone too, is that this is the first time I've seen any public discussion about laserfish. But my question was this, Deborah, regarding the numbers that you mentioned, is that total numbers for laserfish, or is that like for 1 year, and then are there monthly fees, maintenance fees, or how inclusive is that number?
Well, there are monthly fees that will be, just like with Granicus, we pay a monthly surcharge. I mean, if there's something that goes wrong with Granicus, like I said, we don't consult with IT. Once we had it initially installed, of course, we could. Now with this, just the technology is such that you just call them, and they fix it just like that within 5 minutes or so. Same thing with laserfish. You would have that ability to call directly to them. And have them, immediately fix that, remote in and fix it if there's a problem. And so for that service, of course, we pay a managed fee.
And then again, just talking money here, as far as like when the finance committee looks at, fiscal committee looks at this too, is that I think it would be really helpful for everyone involved if all the fees were involved. I mean, I like Granicus, which I really, really like Granicus, but I mean, just the initial fee is quite a bit different than us sending people across the country for excellent training, for instance, and that kind of thing, which is needed. And so I just think it would be very helpful to know the total cost of laserfish or whatever we end up with.
Sure, and thank you. I will go back. I know that when we first launched Granicus, we talked about that because Yvonne Taylor, it was in the Argus, and actually Yvonne Taylor talked about that managed fee back then. And I can tell you they're excellent. I know when we additionally added the ability to save everything basically online, and got the Media Vault was the next term. We negotiated that managed fee very, very well with IT. IT helped us negotiate that down, and it's a great product. So.
Okay, any other discussion on this topic? So just for the kind of summarize it, we're going to address it with the mayor on the 29th and let him know our timeline, that we expect a solution to be brought forward by the end of the quarter for implementation in the very near future.
And IT can pay for it.
And we'll take it out of IT budget. Okay, we'll move on then. The next item on the agenda is Mayor Munson's. Anybody here from the mayor's office to speak? Seeing none. Audit committee, no report. Fiscal committee?
No report.
Land use committee?
Yes, tonight we have the campground ordinance. It's the fourth revision of it, and I think I can safely say everybody involved agrees with the ordinance tonight.
Any other comments for Councilor Litz?
Has anybody seen the full ordinance? Did they present the full ordinance, Cooper and company, the other night when they were at land use? I was not able to attend, and I'm not certain, but a lot of times
Yes,
we've got the
we
condensed
went-
version.
Yes, we did. Yeah, we
Okay,
went
so
through it all.
you saw it in its entirety?
Yes.
Very good. Okay.
And we had just about everybody agreeing, yeah, so
Odd.
it was a good meeting.
Good meeting.
Okay, public service committee?
your hardest working committee was hard at work last week. I'll just give you a brief overview of what we covered. The Vehicles for Hire is ready to move to the full council. That, as you might remember, takes off the pricing regulations for all vehicles for hire. Garbage and recycling, we stalled there on a tie vote. There's still some concerns about it taking council authority away. I believe that there's still some work going on to seek a compromise there. Code enforcement, Mike Cooper from Planning gave us some good timelines on things he's doing to try to streamline that process. Looks like some good work is being done there. Noise ordinance, we had a discussion about, it's not drafted yet, but there's some ideas, and they're working to make it an easier application process, maybe even a monthly process for establishments, and then standardizing some of the rules. And then you'll be seeing, we move forward to the full council, repealing the dance hall ordinance. The police chief talked to us about that, says this is outdated, antiquated. We have other methods that we can police that. So that's the report from Public Services.
Okay. Any questions or comments?
I guess just to add a little on that, with the noise ordinance, the health department, police department are going to hold further meetings with businesses and citizens that are holding or have been holding events outside of the downtown area. The only proposal right now that we've discussed was only concerning the downtown area. And we wanted to at least have some meetings to allow some of the other businesses that are having outdoor events also have some input for the entire city to see if there's any updates we need to make at that time.
Okay. Councilor Knutson?
And regarding the loud or the noise ordinance bit, is that I'm still struggling personally just a little bit on why we need a permit process at all, and clearly the director of health and the chief of police would disagree strongly with me on that. I keep thinking if we'd set a decibel level throughout the city that was consistent, and we only enforce complaints or ordinances by complaint anyway because of the enormity of the process and the expense, and so that then if there was an event going on in my neighborhood and my neighbors complained that I had a band in my backyard and it was way, way, way too loud, that you'd come and check the noise decibel and say and find me whatever it is, or give me a warning the first time and second time say no more D or whatever. But anyway, so I'm still struggling with that, and I'm just mentioning that to you because it seems like more paperwork, even electronically, than is necessary. But again, the chief of police and Department of Health would not agree with me on that. So,
I guess just to comment on that, Dee, basically it's just mostly a notification process. Once they do get the permit, then the police department are notified by the health department that there is going to be an event. So they are able to monitor the event itself because the officers will have the noise meters with them. And that's some of the process that they stated during the meeting is they need to have that process so that the police department are aware of these events and they're just not popping up everywhere. The second part of it is also that if you do get a citation, it's not just paying off the citation, because if you're convicted of a violation of the noise ordinance, we have another ordinance that kicks in and says that if you're convicted, you lose all possibility of having another event for 1 year. So that's some of the things we're looking at, trying to, as you said, have a graded scale instead of just being an all or nothing type of ordinance.
And going just a step further on that, and it does sound like other communities in the Midwest still use a permitting process. And again, I must still just be missing a little something here, but I'm working on it. So,
Councilor Jameson?
Yes, I heard I missed the spirited debate that occurred at that meeting. But I was wondering if Vernon, you could elaborate on the vehicles for hire pricing. Tell me more. Is that like taxi cabs, that we're not going to regulate the price? And
We already took the price regulations off the taxi cabs. The full council voted on that some time ago. But this would be mostly like wheelchair transport type vehicles they were asking for similar treatment, and the current ordinance is very old, and it's very limiting, and frankly, I think some of them are probably not following it anyway. And so we as a group looked at that and determined that it probably is let the market run it in terms of the pricing. Inspections of the vehicle and those kinds of things would still go. Gail, help us.
Well, Gail Eastland, City Attorney's Office. My memory may be faulty, but wasn't it the limousine regulation of rates we took off? The taxi cab is still in place.
You're right. Thank you for correcting me.
Yeah, and there wasn't discussion on that. It was the wheelchair and stretcher transport that you're discussing right now. Okay, thank you.
Councilor Knudsen?
Ian, just on the wheelchair issue, again, I think, I think that's still a, kind of a difficult decision. I think of those people as being, those wonderful people as being more vulnerable possibly than the average person who just hires a taxi. And so I'm kind of the rebel on that one in our committee, but it's good to have a little, it's good to have a little spirited discussion always, I guess, to keep committee meetings more interesting. But so anyway, it's not a unanimous decision, of course, which is fine, that's no problem. But in the wheelchair business, I'm having real trouble personally thinking about going to giving that up totally to the free market, and so that's just another confession here as I end the year with you.
You're granted absolution.
Thank you. I need
Any
that.
other comments? Okay, we'll move on to City Council open discussion, like we haven't had any. Anything we haven't covered? Nothing new? Okay. We have no presentations, and we have no executive session scheduled, so no informational next week, just our City Council meeting tonight, and that will wrap it up for us for the year. Any other conversation?
Is that right?
Councilor Knudsen?
Quickly, they've set the chamber has set the legislative coffees, and I believe the very first one is the last Saturday in January. I think that January 30th is the first one of the 4. And anyway, so mark the calendars for that if we're interested.
Okay. Anything else? If not, it's been a good 2009 for informational meetings, and Merry Christmas. We are adjourned.
Happy holidays.